So I've heard from both boys about school. I guess what are we looking forward to with the school year?
Routine. I'm looking forward to that. I'm not looking forward to being a chauffeur because it's a lot of back and forth when they have two different schedules. But I am also looking forward to them having school lunches and not eating us out of house and home all summer.
It's a daily occurrence to have to go to the grocery store.
Yeah, I think that they are eating like they have hollow legs. They're growing. I mean, Jack's as tall as you are. Tyler's almost as tall as I am. They're just getting big. They're growing up.
I guess we asked them what they did over the summer.
And they had no response. Like, we did all kinds of things. And I love that. They're like, oh, video games. Oh, I hung out with the animals and made sure they were fine. But we've done all kinds of things. Like we went out. But summer here is so long. I think they forget all the things that we did, don't you think?
That's true. We went to the Algarve and to Lisbon.
Mm-hmm.
Jack went to Lisbon with his class on that summertime class trip.
I mean, we went to the Lego store and did all kinds of Legos. We've had a lot of fun family game nights. That's been a great time. We've gone to River Beach. We've, gone to a few things in town. I think that they're just like ready. I think they're ready too. And I think that's saying something because I don't think they were ready when they would have had to go back to school in the U.S. But at the same time, Tyler wasn't done with school until like the 15th of June. And then we thought Jack was going to have to take all of his exams. And then that lasted until like the 23rd of June. So they weren't done until the end of June, really. So I guess it gives us an idea of what this year will be like, too.
I guess it's a different pace of life and a different schedule. So we're so ingrained with starting school in the middle of August that starting school in the middle of September is kind of like you don't know what to do almost that last 3 or 4 weeks. I've always felt that August has always been my least favorite month of the year by far and away, even though that's when my birthday is and there's anniversaries and stuff because, I don't know, the lazy days of summer are pretty much over by August, and the days are getting noticeably shorter, and it's at some point it's like, all right, let's just get this over with and get on with starting school and all this other stuff.
Well, and see, I have always loved August and back to school. It's the school supplies and the start of year and all of that excitement. But this is the first year I haven't done back to school. Like, I haven't been involved in faculty development sessions. I haven't been like move in and welcome back and all these other things. That's really the first time I haven't done that. And it's felt so weird. So weird. Because I see it all online. I'm like, oh, I miss pieces of that. Not all of it, but I miss pieces of that. At the same time, I'm excited for, the change, like the shift.
Well, there's still back to school shopping that needs done because we haven't
done any of that. Yeah.
Of course, I don't know, do they give a list here like they do in the US of all the things you need before you start?
I think there's like an unwritten list. It's not a real list. Like, it's an unwritten you should know. And the only reason why we know what the boys need is because we had to get some of those things already in March, but we've got to go through what they have and see what else they need. I love Jack's worried about pens, as you can tell. He never thinks he has enough, and I think that just like some of the other things, they get set down and misplaced and all of that. So I think that there's pieces of it that we already know, but there'll be other things too, I'm sure. I think I'll get more information. So the way that all of this works here is very different. There will be a required meeting where I will have to go. Jason could go if he's not working and presenting. But the student has to be there as well. They'll go over all the expectations and all the rules. That's where we'll get all of the things that you must have, all of that kind of stuff. But in true Portugal fashion, this will probably happen the night before school starts. Right? And it's the 6th grade and the 9th grade, so there'll be 2 different sessions and all of that kind of stuff. So I have a feeling that that we're expected to just know, because there have been back to school stuff out since August 1st, maybe the 15th. I don't know. There's been back to school stuff out this whole time, but it doesn't start until the 15th of September. So it's really weird. I don't know.
So the boys are redoing ninth grade and sixth grade. They actually passed their classes in the spring, but they weren't in class long enough in Portugal to actually move on. So they're going to redo. But I think that overall, think about, well, let's back up. They'll be retaking, and that's probably a good thing.
I think it's a great thing. Our goal when they got here was for them to just kind of get adjusted and learn a little bit of Portuguese and try and figure out what was going on. And now they surpassed that. Like they did. And all of their instructors were like, if this was just based on passing classes, then we would let them. But federal law here says that you must be enrolled in Portuguese school for at least 2 of the 3 terms, which means they would have had to have been here since January for that to actually happen. And that's not the way it worked. So I think, though, that even if we hadn't moved until the end of the academic year, they would have still had to repeat. Well, Jack would have had to repeat 9th. Tyler might have been able to move on to 7th because there are no exams there. But you have to prove that you know the information at the end of 9th grade in order to move on to secondary school. So we'll see how all of this goes.
But the second thing I was going to say is we've talked about it several times, how we thought they would finish last school year in online American school, and then that all fell apart the first couple of days that we were here. But think about if they had been able to finish the school year online, or if we had just said, oh, well, we'll just ride it out for a few months. They wouldn't have been starting school in Portugal until now. And then there would be all the anxiety all summer of how does school here work. In some ways, I think that getting thrown into it unexpectedly 1 week into us being here was probably the best thing that could have happened to them, because it forced them to deal with it almost immediately. And so hopefully it reduces some of the anxiety now about starting another school year.
I don't think they're anxious about starting school at all. I think that they just don't want to. I think it's more of I like not having to do certain things, and I know that these will be long days, and now I'm going to have to do things more than I'm terrified about going to school. And I think that's saying something, because there was real fear there. So that I think that you're right. I cannot imagine, while we thought it would reduce their anxiety to go into online school and to finish there, I do think that you're right, that it would have made this infinitely worse, because they wouldn't have had any touchstones or connections or known how to read their schedules or any of those basic skills that they already have now. So they know the unwritten rules. And I think that that's the important thing. They know the unwritten rules and the cultural expectations, which they would have had not a clue about. This also gave us the opportunity for each of them to take the Português Língua Não Materna exam to get their language level, to ensure that they had all of the language supports that they needed going into this academic year, and that the school could actually argue for the resources in order to make that happen. And I think that in and of itself is going to set them up for success in a way that otherwise I don't think that they would have gotten.
Well, they would never have met Gervasia and gotten all of the secondary support that they've gotten, all the different things that have happened.
And I cannot imagine navigating the last 3 months of the school year without Gervasia. Like, I can't even imagine, like, she's also a support and a touchstone person for me. I can't imagine that at all. Mm-hmm. I also can't imagine, not knowing the 2 directors or heads of their turns and their grades. And I'm hopeful that they'll be the same people that they'll be working with. But I also know that they know all of the teachers at that level. And so it's okay, even if it's not the same person who's in charge of their turn, because they've already met them, which is huge. And I've met them. And I think that that's also helpful. I'm excited to see all of the ways that I can be involved that I didn't feel like I could be involved in the school before. You know, like what are the things that parents do? Like when Jack's going to have to do bake sales and he's going to have to get all these things ready to earn his way. I want him to earn this trip at the end of this next year, and it all be him and not us just being like, we need you to go. It's going to be great. Here, let's pay for it. So I'm excited for that. I can hardly wait to be a part of it. I am looking forward to, like, you know, whenever they need a volunteer or anything that they need, I'm excited to be a piece of that. And now I have enough Portuguese that I can at least get by and understand more. God, like, I just can't even imagine. I also think, and I wonder, like, we're not the only people in town whose children need lingua não materna classes. But we are the first people from the U.S., right, that have been in this situation at this school. We also are the first people that have moved here that have education as a background. And so that, I think, has been really helpful for these teachers because they've asked me, I did not go in and say, look, you know, second language acquisition, all of those things, this is me. Like, you know, intercultural communication, this is what I do. Let me just get in here and fix things. Instead, I said, well, can you talk to me about the philosophy? Let's talk about pedagogy. Let's talk about your approach. Let's talk about those things. I'd ask those kinds of questions. They ask me those kinds of questions too. Like, what is it like? What are we looking for? What is that kind of transition and expectation? And so it felt much more like a team effort, honestly, than we've ever had that experience for education at the middle school level or beyond, you know. And I find that interesting because this is really middle school. So middle school, we suddenly became really hands-off parents, right? We're like, well, we're done now. We just get to go. Oh, they're going to their classes. What things do they need? Like, I don't know. I met their teachers once, twice a year. I don't really know them. It's completely different. You know, like there's one counselor who's the head of the year for everybody. Not, you know, I mean, it's not exactly the same. It felt very much more like a team effort and a team piece of it. And I think that was very helpful because I could then say, okay, when things didn't work, I could say, here are the bare necessities or here are the basics of what I see I would give my students as English language learners. And here's how I would meet those needs. Because at one point, I mean, Jack didn't pass a test. And it's because he didn't understand it. And the teacher didn't speak any English. And he got himself in a situation where he missed half of the test because he didn't understand the instructions. And the teacher just repeated the instructions on the sheet. And he couldn't use his phone and he didn't know what to do. And so it was like, okay, now I'll go ahead and step in and say, here's a suggestion. Here are the lists of things that I would say, you know, this is what I would suggest. These are the kinds of accommodations that I would expect. And then they were like, that's fantastic. Here are the things that we can do. We hadn't thought about X, Y, and Z because they really haven't had the experience before.
Well, it's definitely as the Dynason's turn having to enroll them in school 1 week into being here. But it's one of those butterfly flaps its wings kind of things almost, which really has been the story of our time here in Portugal. But I think about if we hadn't done that, like we said, they wouldn't have met Gervasia and gotten involved with that. I'm not sure that Tyler would have taken his, the lessons that he took, or Jack with their private Portuguese lessons. Maybe they would have, but maybe they wouldn't have. There were bullying issues that seemed to stop in the school around the time that they got enrolled. You wouldn't have met Senor Antonio, who guards the gate at the school.
I love Senor Antonio. We have wonderful conversations, and so he helps me practice my Portuguese every day. But yeah, there are so many people who've become integral parts of our lives that we wouldn't have had that touch base with. And I feel like, you know, this is just our story, though. I mean, this is the way it works. Like, something insane happens and you think, is this going to be okay? How do we do this? We navigate it. And my mantra has always been to say out loud, it'll be okay. It's okay. We've got this. It's okay. We've got this. But then you look back and you think, this was a pivotal moment. And also, yes, we do have this, and we're so grateful for it.
Well, this is what we wanted in part with the move, though, was to be a part of a community and not just be, I don't know, I've said to several people, we didn't want to move here and live in little America, in
Right.
some enclave of English-speaking people who go about their days doing American things or English speaker things. We wanted to be a part of the actual true community here.
Yeah.
And we found a place where we've been able to do that, and we become a part of the community. I'm sure there's things that we have yet to learn and,
Oh, I'm sure.
get better at to be better community members. We're still the eccentric Americans. That's probably always going to be the case, though, isn't it?
We will always be the eccentric Americans, but I think we'll be more the eccentric Americans that are part of the group. And I think that's what I'm looking forward to this year. We didn't have the opportunity to be part of the group from the beginning, and now we will be. And I think that that's very exciting because, yeah, they can get to know us.
All right, I think that wraps it up for this episode about school and summertime. Catch us again next time.